Our News from the Hill segment tonight. Yesterday, President Trump invited a small group of reporters from conservative-leaning media outlets to the White House to discuss his first 100 days as president. Here to discuss the details of the exclusive event, One America News Chief White House Correspondent Trey Yingst. Trey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
All right, Trey, tell me about this. You were one of the few people invited, actually. I believe there were about 30 people total. What was it like?
Well, it was a really unique opportunity for members of different conservative media outlets to actually hear the president's thoughts on a wide range of domestic and foreign policy issues. So what actually was originally scheduled to be a reception where the president would just walk around chatting with different reporters from across the country ended up turning into a press briefing in the Roosevelt Room. And like you said, this was a private invite-only reception for just a handful of media outlets that the president actually picked himself. One America News was included in that list of conservative outlets. And we asked the president a lot of different questions, ranging from immigration policy to tax policy to the foreign policy issues such as Syria and North Korea that are unfolding all around the world.
Right, and I want to get into the details of some of the things he said, because there was actually a lot of news that broke in that press briefing, or the reception turned press briefing. But let me ask you something really quick. Of yourself and the other conservative-leaning or representatives from conservative-leaning outfits there, did people get the feeling that this reception was more of an invitation to alternative media almost to be part of the mainstream media? Or was this more thumbing the nose at the mainstream media and saying, hey, the Trump administration doesn't need you, you're not the only ones that we focus on?
Well, I think for the Trump administration, they wanted to send a clear message that they support other forms of media than the traditional broadcasters. And this is something that we've seen really throughout the Trump administration so far. Press Secretary Sean Spicer on a daily basis is calling on media outlets that are newer to the media scene here in D.C., such as One America News. So oftentimes this is something that we've seen not only from President Trump, but from his entire administration. So I think this was another opportunity for President Trump to invite some of the media outlets that in the past haven't had as much access to the White House. Press Secretary Spicer yesterday said that he wanted to make sure these media outlets were reminded that the Trump administration does want to give them access, despite the fact that they may not be the traditional 5 cable outlets that many Americans are familiar with, but they may be online outlets, they may be bloggers, they may be radio hosts, or they may be, like One America News, a newer outlet to the media scene here in D.C.
Right, independent, family-owned. No, it's very interesting. I mean, I kind of interpreted it, at least from the outside, as being sort of a double-edged message here. It was both an invitation and kind of a pat on the back for up-and-comers, saying, hey, we're still a nation where free enterprise is valued, where competition and startups are something that we should be, celebrating, not something we should be squashing, but also, a little bit of an elbow to the mainstream media saying, hey, you're not as important as you think you are, so just remember there are other people that'll hold you accountable. Trey, let me ask you, you broke news yesterday. President Trump announced a tariff. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was a really unique opportunity to speak with the president on his trade policy, particularly when it comes to trade with Canada. Now, during this meeting, the president was talking and he was standing next to his press secretary, Sean Spicer, and he said, should we tell him, Sean? Should we tell him? And the press secretary said, go ahead. And President Trump said, we are going to be imposing a 20% tax on lumber coming into the United States. He's been an outspoken critic of a lot of the trade deals that the United States developed under the Obama administration. One of those trade deals having to do with lumber, and also he's spoken out against the dumping of lumber into the United States marketplace. When it comes to this industry, it's a $5 billion undercut to U.S. Loggers here in the United States. So the president wants to make sure that he's putting the American jobs and American economy first when it comes to lumber, particularly lumber coming from Canada. So this 20% tax on lumber coming into the United States is an effort by the Trump administration to try to curb some of this illegal dumping that is occurring from those loggers there in Canada. So we did break that story last night, and we were also able to discuss some other big stories such as Syria and North Korea that have been unfolding for the Trump administration.
Right, and I'm not the biggest fan of tariffs. I'm not sure that it's good for our economy to do that. We're actually going to be talking about that, not today, but in the upcoming shows in the next few days. We're going to be debating the merits and the disadvantages of tariffs here. One last question, though, and that's, you asked a question to President Trump yesterday about the Syrian missile strike, about sanctions that are on some individuals in Syria. What response did you get?
Yeah, so yesterday we saw the Trump administration and the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, actually coming out before the media earlier in the day saying that the Trump administration would be sanctioning 270 individuals that are somehow related to the Syrian government and their use of chemical weapons. So I asked the president, just standing feet away from him, and I said, what are you going to do about this stockpile of chemical weapons that the Assad regime already possesses? And they actually already have 3 tons of chemical weapons. So although these sanctions are going to address the future production of chemical weapons, the big question for many people here in Washington and around the world is what happens to the weapons that Bashar al-Assad already has there in Damascus. And the president issued a bit of a warning to the regime of Assad there in Syria, saying, wait and see what happens if they use chemical weapons again. And he followed up to talk about the failures of the Obama administration, saying that the deal that was forged under President Obama's administration to remove chemical weapons from Syria was like taking candy from a baby. He actually used this analogy there and went on to say that the Obama administration was duped when it came to trying to remove those chemical weapons from Syria. So it was a unique perspective to hear what the president has to say about the situation unfolding in Syria. And then again, we did see that military action that the president has not ruled out in the future when it comes to chemical weapons attacks on civilians.
Right, 59 Tomahawk missiles. I mean, that's a message of some sort to Bashar al-Assad. Even though he has that stockpile of chemical weapons, maybe he'll be a little more hesitant to use them in the future, hopefully. Trey Yanks, chief White House correspondent for One America News. Ladies and gentlemen, Trey Yanks is doing remarkable work. I'm really proud of what he's doing at the White House. Trey, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for your kind words.